If you're an emerging franchise founder, you already know this. The jump from 10 to 100 units is where most brands stall out. Not because the concept isn't strong, but because the founder is drowning in chaos. I'm Guy Coffey, franchisor, franchisee, and growth strategist. I've been where you are, and I know what it takes to build a brand that scales without burning out, selling out, or losing control. That's why I created the Franchise Scale Up Show. Every week, I'll share the playbooks, the red flags, and the mindset shifts that separate the brands that stall from the ones that scale. So if you're serious about protecting your vision and multiplying your brand, hit subscribe right now. This is the Franchise Scale Up Show. I'm Guy Coffey. Let's get to work. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Franchise Scale Up Show with me, Guy Coffey, and my special guest today, Steven Pivnik. Steven Pivnik is an entrepreneur, endurance athlete, mountain climber, author, speaker, and he spent 26 years building a company called Binary Tree that he exited from, and now he helps people that are growing their businesses, helping them grow with clarity and helping them exit with clarity. So Steven, first question, if I looked at your calendar tomorrow, what am I likely to see as your first couple things on the day? Is it a training session? Is it a board meeting? Is it a client meeting? Are you going somewhere in Brooklyn or Long Island, to go get something to eat? What's your first couple things of the day?
First thing is definitely training. 6 out of 7 days, sometimes 7 is training. It could be a light day, it could be a heavy day. Tomorrow is just actually calisthenics. So, full body calisthenics, which I'm a huge fan of. You don't need a gym to go work out.
Right?
And then, the second thing on my calendar almost every single day is journaling. I love to journal, both to, recap what happened yesterday and to plan for the day ahead. And then I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a whole bunch of client meetings after that.
But you get the people that are actually training for events and the people that are, I'll say this, I don't mean to, make anybody mad, but the people who are serious about getting their workouts in, generally they're morning workout people, because if they've also have businesses to run and things like that, everybody knows the day gets out of hand. So you get the training done first and the journaling second. We're a little flipped on that. I do the journaling first and then go work out. But my workouts are nowhere near as long as yours. So
Ah, t t
um,
Tomorrow's gonna be short. Tomorrow's only half an hour, so I'm actually looking forward to it because I'm just coming off of a race, so I'm not yet into like full-blown race training. That's gonna start
yeah,
again next week.
yeah, yeah. Well, you have done extremely well. Just you came to America as an immigrant from Eastern Europe, and you know, and then you built a company, and you're doing these races. Congratulations! You just finished your 18th Ironman length triathlon. You've been to the World Championships. You've climbed Mount Everest, literally, um, which a lot of people can't say. But how did that, if you don't mind, just a little personal thing first? How did coming to America as an immigrant shape who you are and how driven you are?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta give a lot of credit to my parents and my grandparents. I think you pick up things obviously as a child, and I just watch them grind it out all day, every day. I don't remember the word sick day being a word ever used in my household, whether it was a
Right.
small little cold or a flu. My father would go to work, so I definitely learned. I got my entrepreneurial I guess, bug from him. I definitely got my work ethic from him and my grandfather. And when it came time, then and the right opportunity presented itself, I jumped in with both feet and went into business for myself, leaving my corporate job only about 2 or 3 years into my career.
Ah, okay. All right. Well, one of the things that we focus on here is the effect of entrepreneurship and franchising on families, and that work ethic, the environment you're in, the five people you're around the most, really affect it. And you're a walking, talking, biking, running, swimming example of that happening, right? Um, any other particular thing from your childhood that influences like how you tackle things or how you make decisions or anything like that?
I mean, family was always big, right? We were a very cohesive, large family unit. Family events occupied many of our weekends.
Mm,
So, turning into the family man that I became, I'm sure was, influenced by that. And just going after things that we wanted, like my parents, and grandparents, we moved here to go after the American dream. I mean, sure, we were fleeing Jewish persecution in the former Soviet Union, but we
mhm,
had we had many choices. America was one of them, and they chose America and to live the proverbial American dream, right? So watching them go after it and accomplishing it to a certain extent,
mhm.
um, what was what definitely etched itself into my head, and I started pursuing it as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, based on who you are and how you are, I would say that they're probably super, super happy about how things turned out. So,
Yep.
um,
I wish they were alive, but yes,
yeah,
they were.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
smiling from above.
absolutely. So we're not going to go too much into binary tree. It's a big part of your story. I know it was hard scrabble in the beginning. You worked, 26 years. So it's a overnight success 26 years later.
Exactly.
Um, but you know what? Did you have a grand vision from day one, or were you like, I know how to do this. I know how to do this. It's a value in the marketplace. I'm just going to do this and make some money while I'm doing something else. Or were you like, I'm going to turn this into something that will be life altering?
I wish I had that vision. At the end of the day, we just set up shop to be an application development shop, just like we have a million and one apps on our phones these days. Back in the
Hmm.
90s, large corporations didn't. There was no such thing as software as a service. There was no apps that companies can buy. If big companies wanted to automate business processes, they needed to either have internal staff of developers or outsource development projects to folks. And so we
Okay.
started up shop as just developing applications in New York City for large corporations. And one of these little apps that we developed mushroomed into an entire line of business for us. So, it's better to be lucky than to be
Okay.
good. But, we also make our own luck by making the right decisions and being in the right places. So, I
Hmm.
think we were definitely in the right place because of our expertise and our skill set. Also made a really, really good decision to, pursue this one little project that,
Yeah.
we had an with which, we could have easily passed on because it didn't really meet our criteria, but we said, "You know what? Let's go after
Ooh,
it." And that mushroom
really?
into $40 million a year of business.
Out of I have to dig deeper on that because that's really interesting. So you're making these apps for companies. You're in New York City. You could either take that as like, I'm in New York City. There's so much competition here. You could be like, I'm in New York City. There's so much opportunity here. Obviously, that's the way you looked at it.
Yes.
But out of all the like, how many apps were you working on? And tell me about the app, not like the details because it will go
Sure.
right here for me. But what was different about that app? And out of it was it 1 out of 50 apps or is it 1 out of 20 or like what was
Yeah,
the number?
I would say that's a great question. I haven't been asked that. I love to go into it, and I promise I won't bore you or your audience. Um, if I had to pick a number, it was probably our 20th or 25th project to develop an app for somebody, and most of
Okay.
these apps were automating sophisticated business workflows. Right, so there was a lot of there was and plus a lot of them had graphics and, like I said, workflows and business logic, and we can really see the impact the application was having on either revenue, on efficiencies, on processes, etc. The one that we were asked, the one that hit, was to convert email data. And because JP Morgan at the time was going from a Microsoft email product, which was like a departmental email system, to an IBM email product, which was called Lotus Notes. And they said, you guys know this technology pretty well. We need you to convert data for us from one platform to the other so that when employees walk in the morning, they have the same inbox, the same calendar, and the same contacts. So we
Okay.
compared that to all these other cool applications that we were doing and said, that's the most boring project in the world. Plus, we don't have anybody available to do the work for them. But I didn't want to turn down the opportunity from a revenue perspective. and the laptops had just come out, so now I can work during my commute because I lived in New Jersey, office was in Manhattan. I'm like, "You know what? I got an hour and a half each way. We'll take the project. I'll just write this boring code on the train to and from work for the next couple of months." So that was
Okay.
the genesis of it, and then email obviously became ubiquitous, and every single company was rolling out, sophisticated email systems versus the departmental email systems that they had in the past. And every time there was a need to move from one system to another, or because of mergers and acquisitions and divestitures, we were, I like to call us, the best email moving truck in the world.
Okay. All right. By the way, like you rolled that off like I had an hour and a half commute. To anybody that doesn't live in New York or Connecticut or Jersey, that sounds like craziness, but it's so normal there. When I lived on the East Coast, I had an hour and 20-minute commute and I couldn't even brag about it because there was people coming from further away. But,
That's
anywhere else in the country, they're like, you did what? You couldn't
yeah,
find a job closer?
exactly. I can't believe I spent 10 years on that train every single day. First one in the office, last one out. But
And now you live on the beach in Long Island and go swimming and running on the beach and all that stuff. So it worked
that's
out.
right.
It worked out, but I imagine there was times in that journey where it wasn't all like, "Oh, we hit it big. Life is easy. Like I'm not worried at all about anything." So in the darker times, what got you through? Did you have a support system of like family? You said you had a big family, or partners, or team, or was it like I've got these people on my team. I have to make sure this works because I feel responsible for them. What got you through like the darkest time? Because there's always darker times in entrepreneurship, right?
Oh, 100%. And oh my God, we don't have enough time to talk about all the dark times. There was plenty of, oh my God, how am I going to make payroll on Monday? That
Hmm.
happened at least a dozen times. There was, key employees leaving for a variety of reasons and us not being able to figure out how we're going to get by. And guess what? We got by every single time.
Hmm.
There was some mismanagement of the company when I was away for a couple of years because we had sold a division of our business to someone else, and I was part of that deal, and I did a horrible job of managing my own company from an ownership perspective, and there was
Okay.
a lot of mismanagement, which um, resulted in near bankruptcy before I came back.
Okay.
So yes, anyway, so there was a lot of dark times, but to answer your question, family definitely got me through it. I knew, my why was to become. I was the provider, right?
Hmm.
And I had a responsibility to my family, and to me, failure was not an option. I had because I had started the company from day one. I had the skill set necessary to jump back into whatever role was needed at the time. I can play temporary CFO. I can play roll up my sleeve and write code if I needed to. I could be a salesperson if I needed to. So when times got tough and staff got lean, I definitely needed to roll up my sleeves and pitch in.
Yeah.
So responsibility for the family, the advice of great friends. The majority of my friends are entrepreneurs, and
Mm-hmm.
they go through their own entrepreneurial journey. I cry on their shoulders during
Mm-hmm.
hard times and really got some, sage advice from them. So it was a wonderful support system that we had.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you were surrounded and you were engaged in conversations with a lot of people before you had to have a conversation with somebody. And
Exactly.
just kind of circling back on that, when did you realize for Binary Tree that you being the hardest worker in the room wasn't your highest and best, you know, uh contribution? Like you needed to kind of let people do their thing
Yeah, it didn't
and
take me
you
too
stay in
long.
your area of genius.
Yeah,
Sorry to
it
overtalk.
didn't take me too long, but I guess if 10 years isn't long, maybe a little bit longer than that. I joined a peer group, a CEO peer group called the CEO Project, which I'm
Mhm.
I'm still a huge fan of, and I work with them from an advisory perspective right now. And just I can recommend an advisory program. I'm sorry, a peer advisory program for folks that are listening enough. It's just
Okay.
it's very lonely at the top, right? And
Mm,
nobody in your organization has the weight of the entire company on their shoulders like you do. And
mhm,
it's very hard for your spouse to appreciate the cash flow crisis that you're in the middle of, because you don't want to be alarming at home, right? It's bad enough that you know about it all.
Right.
So the list goes on and on and on for the benefits of being surrounded by like-minded CEOs, either in your industry, or more importantly, outside your industry. So
Yeah.
when I started, working with other CEOs, is when I finally realized that, I need much more of an organizational structure underneath me,
Yeah.
so that I can actually attend these meetings. And one of the criteria was to be a member of the CEO project is you need to have 3 days a quarter to go to these meetings. And go as right now, as we recruit additional members for the program, the number one reason people can't join, and these are folks running 10, 20, $30 million companies, like, you know what, I can't spare 3 days a quarter. Like, you're doing yourself such a disservice by being so integrally needed in your business.
Well, you just stole my next question, which was going to be, if you were coaching a founder that had a $5 million business, what's the first sign that they're accidentally becoming the bottleneck? And if they can't step away for 12 days out of a year, three a quarter, that's probably a really good sign that they're too involved in the day to day to actually be looking at the higher level and looking strategically, right?
Yeah, it's really simple. Like, we call this the hub and spoke architecture. So if you are the hub of every single decision, all of your biggest sales, your biggest three customer relationships, many of your employee relationships, and you can't go on vacation without your laptop, then there's an issue. You're creating risk for the business. You're definitely hurting your valuation, because a buyer will see this instantly,
Yeah.
and you're killing yourself physically and mentally.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think that, there's only nobody can do this better than I can, and that could not be further from the truth.
Absolutely. There's a gentleman that I like listening to. His name is Dan Martell, and he says no one's going to do it as good as you, but 100% done by you is not good. 80% done well by somebody else is freaking awesome. It's
100%.
like you can tie up you can put a bow on it. You can teach them like, hey, it's got to finish up like this or whatever. But getting 80% of the lift done by somebody else is still fantastic, right?
100%. I love it.
Yeah.
Dan Martell. That's Buy Back Your Time, right? That was his latest book.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Su-
He's got some
Super,
great stuff.
super sharp.
Yeah. 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 Um, what's one scaling lesson that took you years to learn, but only a few minutes to explain to other people? Because you work with other founders, you're working with young business people. You're speaking on stages about this. Like, what was a lesson that, in hindsight, you're like, you just mentioned, like, oh, it took me 10 years to learn that. But if you could tell it to somebody, it wouldn't take that long. If they just believed in you, blind faith, and just said, okay, Steven said it, I'm just going to do it. And you'd be like, good, because it's going to work.
For whatever function you want to scale, hire somebody that's operated it at 2x that level. So
Oh, okay.
if you want to scale your sales from 10 to $20 million, you know, bring in somebody that's run a $20 million company, or even a $30 million company. If you want to accelerate, your pace of application development, hire somebody that's, run an application development shop that, at a completely different level, or twice the level you have. And the same scenario applies to, every single position. So there's
Hmm.
so many folks out there that have operated businesses at different levels, and those are the skills that are required to scale and make everything else so much easier.
Okay. Well, that's a great one. Like someone that's done it twice as big as where you're trying to get, or where you're at right now, because they've
Right.
seen it. Yeah, they've seen around that corner already. That's
Yeah,
a great one.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, tell me about this. You've completed 18 Ironman races. People would say like, oh, of course he sold for a bunch of money and now he's got nothing to do but sit on the beach or run on the beach or swim in the ocean. And, but you don't do 18 of them post exit. You've done a lot of those while you were doing that. So my question on that is, I've never done anything that long or anything like that, but in endurance races, like long bike races that I've done, there's a point where you're like, why am I doing this? You can give yourself an excuse very easily if you got an injury or something like that. How do you equate the mindset of going through the tough times or even, feeling super overconfident, like you go out too fast in the swim or something like that with running a business? Because I do a lot of things in business. A lot of people haven't ridden in a Peloton. They haven't been in a sprint in a big race or anything like that. So they can't understand. They never drafted behind somebody. I know you guys can't draft, but it's the one thing I was good at in bike riding is drafting.
I love it.
That's
I'm a
my
great
strong
drafter.
suit. Yeah, that's my strong suit on my resume. I'm a great drafter. Um, you know, uh, but like, how does that equate to running a business?
Yeah,
The
there's
mentality.
first of all, you are correct. 12 of those 18 were pre-exit. So I took on
Okay.
endurance sports as a midlife crisis at the ripe old age of 40, and I fell in love with endurance, specifically Ironman triathlons, and I was on a mission to get to the world championship. So I raced my butt off. But to answer your question specifically, there's a ton of similarities that I found that between entrepreneurship and endurance sports, and they feed on each other. Just to name a few, planning, preparation, execution, pivots, setbacks, decisions, stamina, leadership. The list goes on and on and on. And what I found, the more I got into endurance sports, the more I was able to draw upon my corporate experience to fuel some of my endurance sports and vice versa. Like if I
Hmm.
was hurting at call it mile 20, because everybody hurts at mile 20 of the run.
Hmm.
'Cause it's affectionately known as the wall, right?
Okay.
I would, dig deep into my memory bank. So, remember that time that you couldn't make payroll? Now you suffer through the entire weekend, and then somehow you miraculously, like Tuesday came around and you figured out a way to get it done. I'm like, you know what? Just figure out a way to get to the next aid station. If you can get to the next aid station at mile 21, things will get better, and it
Yeah.
always does, and vice
Yeah.
versa, right? In business, like whenever there was a challenge that was occurring, I would say, well, remember that last Ironman where you thought there was no way you were going to finish that bike leg because of the crazy hills, and somehow you dug deep and you persevered and you made it through that race, and it ended up being great. So you just build up all these memories, and they help fuel other aspects of your life. So a ton of similarities. They
Yeah.
fuel each other. Highly advise it.
Yeah. Victories and momentum that no one else sees. You
Yeah,
just know you did it. Well,
exactly. And it
could
doesn't
be
have to
a
be anything crazy like mountain climbing or Ironman distance triathlons. Even
yeah.
like memories of completing 5Ks,
Yeah.
5K running races, or like running jogs every couple of months. That's
Yeah.
enough to fuel the business fire as well.
Yeah. We're doing those early morning cold swim workouts. Yep.
Yeah,
I
love
did
those.
it. Did not feel like it. Um, so that's interesting. So now you are helping other people run the same play with less of a learning curve with your help in real life and business. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is I saw a really interesting event that it would be right up so many people's alleys. It was a combination of business leadership and endurance sport training. It was an experience. It wasn't lectures and things like that. Tell me about that and where'd you come up with that idea and how'd it go?
No, yeah, thank you for teeing that up. I love speaking about this. So obviously, as I just mentioned, I'm a huge fan of endurance sports, and I feel that my endurance experiences have benefited my entrepreneurial journey. So
Yeah.
I know that there's also a lot of entrepreneurs that participate in these sports like triathlon and mountaineering. So I
Hmm.
decided to combine. So I have two different events that are coming up. One is going to be utilize triathlon training as the endurance component, and the other one is going to be beginner mountaineering training as the endurance component.
Wow.
And I'm going to be bookending the endurance component of these events with exit advisory services. So I'll meet with the participants, one on one, prior to the actual event to do an exit readiness assessment, which I can get into in a second.
Hmm.
Start doing some planning with them. When they come to the event, they're going to be surrounded by like-minded individuals like themselves, right? They'll be surrounded by me and a co-trainer of mine. Me for the triathlon event, him and I have completed 58 long distance triathlons together. So there's definitely going
Okay.
to be some great coaching and advisory work on the endurance
Okay.
aspect of it, while we obviously all talk shop, during dinner because it's going to be filled with like-minded individuals.
Oh, I
Ve
love
ve
that.
so that's
Yeah.
happening in Atlantic Beach, New York, here on Long Island in July, and then
Okay.
the climbing one is gonna take place in Ecuador, on one of the volcanoes in Ecuador. It's just a
Okay.
great environment for beginners and experts alike. It's not the most challenging terrain in the world, but it is at altitude, so people will get their first glimpse at, functioning at altitude, and I'm gonna
Okay.
have, one of the founders of the CEO project, that I mentioned, with me there as a, co-coach. So, during the
Okay.
day, we're gonna be led by a highly experienced and authorized organization on the mountain,
Okay.
certified mountain guides that, know these mountains like the back of their hand. And similar
Okay.
to the triathlon one, before and after the trip, I'll be doing one-on-one exit planning advisory work with the participants.
Very cool. I love that. I mean, that kind of reminds me of the guy who did Dilbert. I forget Scott Adams. He's like, I'm not the best artist in the world. I'm a decent cartoonist, and I'm not the funniest guy in the world, but I'm the best cartoonist that can write about business, funny stuff
Yep,
on the
yes, he is.
planet. So you're doing that with your passion and vocation of endurance athlete, as well as all of your experience and all of those other things. Because I think what people miss sometimes is, great, you built up a company, you struck gold, you went through the challenges, you actually went through an exit, which is a huge process in itself that you can't learn unless you've been through it, which is a big deal. And then all of a sudden things start clicking, and then you have more conversations about things like that. But also with your CEO project and those mentors and the masterminds that you're in, you've received, I've been on the receiving end of tons of advice, and you've probably given a ton of advice and heard all this stuff. So it's like something that you're just really steeped in. I always say, like, when I'm coaching people, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's a great idea." And I'm like, it's it's not rocket science. It's like, I've
Right.
been down this path before. That's a pile of dog poop. Don't step in the dog poop. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's brilliant." Right. But
Yep.
but you've done all this, and now you're helping out other people. But take me to the exit ready assessment, because I think what most people think of in that is, I know the value of my company. I got a third party opinion on the value. So yeah, and when I want to sell it, like, I get a valuation done on our companies every year, just so I know, like, from someone else's perspective, what it's worth. Right.
Sure.
Whether I like it or not. And, and then I'm thinking in my head, like, well, exit assessments, like, yeah, when I'm ready to sell, I know what I'm going to put it up for and go from there. But tell us about the three components that you put into an exit assessment.
Sure. So, yeah, third party valuations are definitely valuable. But there's a whole, but that's strictly just a financial valuation based on numbers and the industry, and they usually come in at either an EBITDA multiple or a top line multiple. But there's so many other elements that a buyer is going to look at. So what I do is there's basically three assessments that I take a founder through, and it's really simple to fill out. It takes no more than 25 minutes to complete all three. The first one is a psychological readiness assessment to figure out whether they're ready to part with their baby. Most
Mm,
founders are very, very hesitant to part with their baby for a variety of reasons, and this gives them a really clear um, perspective on where they stand and how they can move the needle to be more ready. The second one is a personal financial readiness. This goes a little bit in depth into individual personal finances and lifestyle requirements. And at the end, it spits out a report to say, based on your lifestyle requirements, here's what the sale, here's how much the sale of this company is going to contribute to that. Some people don't really appreciate that they may be way ahead of the curve and ahead of most, and that the gap in what they need, in their savings accounts and in their investment accounts really isn't that large to sustain the lifestyle that they need. Others, I know I'll be totally transparent here. I was way behind the curve to fund the lifestyle that I wanted post exit. I mean, I was 100% dependent on the sale of my company. If that didn't
Mhm.
happen, I would need to continue to work. I mean, I'm continuing anyway, but I want to. I'm enjoying this, and I want to. So there's a whole different range of where people are from a personal financial readiness perspective. And the
Mhm.
last one, which is the most valuable, is an assessment that scores a company on 8 drivers of valuation. And this is where a founder really gets his or her eyes opened on what an acquirer is going to see from a financial perspective, from a differentiation perspective, from a cash flow perspective, from a founder dependency perspective, like I said, there's 8 different drivers there. And
Mhm.
the best part I like about that component is it comes with a scenario builder. So me and the client can sit live using this interface, and we can move some of these dials, and we can focus on the ones that are in the red and move them a couple of points. And then we can see just by moving these dials from these 8 drivers, what effect that has on enterprise value. And then, so then
Mhm.
we can totally decide that, over the next, 24, 36, sometimes 48 months, these are the things that we're going to focus on because they're going to move the needle the most.
Yeah, I was just gonna just mention that it's really good to start building that relationship early so that you have time to adjust and make adjustments. I mean, as basic as, personal expenses through the business, if it's a single unit or something like that. Like you want to have a few years tax returns and things really, really dialed in before you even go to market because buyers are looking for other things other than the EBITDA. They
Exactly.
want to see the quality of your contracts, your org structure, what's missing, who's, all those kind of. Oh, I mean, you have 8 drivers, so it's more complicated than a number. And like, I think I want to sell, but it sounds like you do a great job of providing that clarity for people. And for who's your ideal client for something like that?
The my th this is applicable for clients, across the board, but my ideal customer that I love to work with is a company that's doing $10 million or greater in sales. 10 to 50 million is my sweet spot for a
Okay.
founder that's been at it for, 10 plus years.
Okay.
Those are the ones that I prefer to work with.
Great. Great. Well, I'm sure there's some people in our audience that fit that bill, and this might be of high interest to them. So, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your knowledge, your story. It's inspirational, it's educational. If people want to reach out to you, we'll have everything on that. Those camps, the Ecuador camp sure does sound interesting. Let me ask you one final question just to land the plane here. What is your definition of success today that would have surprised 25-year-old Steven?
Wow. What a surprise 25-year-old Steven. 25-year-old Steven was working 80 hours a week and loving it. So success right now is not having to work anywhere near that amount of hours while still enjoying, family, friends, and the beach.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thanks for sharing that because it's something for people to keep in mind as they're going through that grind. People talk about balance and everything and I'm like, you can get balance later. Like you can't start out with balance though.
No,
It doesn't nothing scales. It's like
no,
Neapolitan ice cream that's
no such
melted.
thing.
Everything just melds together. Like there's times where
Exactly.
you go hard to build something and then later on you have more time to enjoy the benefits of it. I remember the first time we talked, one of the things that you're really proud of, and not from a monetary perspective, but you could tell like when you mentioned it, like you showed me like the view outside your home and it was on the beach and like for you that means closer to training, closer to swim
Yeah.
training, closer to running training and things like that. And I bet that's something that you look at every day and you're like, well, I'm not in Jersey. Not that Jersey's bad. I love Jersey. Lived there for 2 years. And not having to commute an hour and a half each way is probably also another feather in your cap right now.
Yep. Right, it's right there, and I love it.
There you go. There you go. Thanks for sharing with us. Well, Steven, it has been an absolute pleasure. I hope everybody is listening and watching has enjoyed the show. We'll have everything so you can reach out to Steven if you're in need of his services, or maybe it's not today. Maybe it's in 2 years from now, like as you're growing your company. But I can tell you just from my brief conversations with Steven, just a pleasure, wealth of knowledge, super helpful. And just a good guy. So congratulations on all your success, and thanks for helping other people reach it as well.
Thank you, Guy. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your audience.
That wraps up today's episode of the Franchise Scale Up Show. If this gave you a strategy you can put into play, please share it with one founder who needs the help. You might save them months of pain. If you're ready to go deeper, whether it's building your support infrastructure, accelerating territory sales, or preparing for private equity, go to guycoffey.com. That's GUYCOFFEY, and book a free franchise growth strategy call. I only partner with founders who are committed to scaling without losing control. If that's you, I'd love to connect. Until next time, protect your vision, move fast, and scale smart. I'm Guy Coffey. Talk soon.